Hello, everybody. Hi again, and welcome to a new episode of the Reputation Room. Today, we are going to immerse ourselves in the beverages industry with an Australian farm girl. She went from a farm in Australia to Hong Kong, Shanghai, Atlanta, and now to Amsterdam. What an amazing ride. I wonder what city is next. Her name is Joanna Price, and she is the Chief Corporate Affairs at the Heineken Company. I must sincerely thank Joanna for being here with me today. She and I only met a few weeks ago, and she was extremely gracious and generous about participating in this podcast and supporting it as it takes off. In addition to being the farm girl that she is, Joanna describes herself as someone driven by a passion for creating a sustainable future. We will talk about that and much more in the next hour. Joanna, thank you for being here with me today.
Javier, it's a huge privilege and I love the concept of this podcast. So happy to be a part.
You're welcome, Joanna, and thank you for those words supporting the podcast. So let's get started if you're ready. You started in strategy and research before making what turned out to be a 20-year move into corporate affairs at Coca-Cola. What made you cross over, and did you know at the time that you were not going back?
Great question. So in terms of did I not know I was not going to go back? No, I didn't. So let's start with the back half first. But in terms of why did I make the transition? I was originally, before I joined Coke, working for Kellogg in strategy and research. And it's while I was with Kellogg, research came out directly linking salt and heart disease. And at that point, there was quite a bit of salt in breakfast cereal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've always been one of those people that when people get a problem that they don't know how to solve, they just kind of hand it to me and say, can you please just make this go away? So I was handed the please just make this go away. And as I started to work out how to tackle the problem, I realized that I had to engage researchers. I had to engage government around legislation. I had to engage NGOs. I got heavily involved in reformulation. And what I began to realize was that the work that I was doing and the initiatives, like the strategies at the end of the day that I was implementing was having a bigger impact on the strategy of the company than I was in my strategy role because it was very here and now. And so when I joined Coke, I always say to people that was the first time I got hired as a corporate affairs professional. And in the 20 years that I was with Coke, I had more impact on the strategy of the company in that corporate affairs role, which kept me. And that's why I think I've stayed in corporate affairs because the impact you can have, you get to feel it and live it in your career lifetime, if that makes sense. So I never went back. I love it.
So have you not ever suffered from what I've heard a lot from people, from peers of yours, in terms of not being engaged or involved early enough in the strategy building before it's too late?
So, look, I think that anybody in corporate affairs can't say there hasn't been a point in their career when they got brought in too late. It happens. And sometimes it's just by accident. Sometimes it's they just didn't think about it. I don't know. But I think for me in corporate affairs, and we all say never waste a crisis, but there's like never waste a crisis. And then there's like really do something with that crisis and fundamentally change the company so it never happens again. And so I think when I sort of say I've had more impact on the strategy of the company, it was because as we were dealing with different crises or situations or changes in legislation, you didn't just deal with the problem, so to speak, in the moment. You actually thought about, well, what does this mean for us as a company? How do we get stronger, better, remain around for the next however many years kind of thing? So what do we actually do with that? So for me, it's not about did strategy happen in the absence of me. I think that I have probably inserted myself into the strategy and said, as a result, this is what we need to do.
And I love the inserting yourself. Sometimes it's just about that.
Yeah.
Just kick the door down and insert yourself, right?
Yeah. Someone said to me, get those elbows out. Every now and then, get the sharp elbows out.
Totally. When you and I connected in the first place, you made a point about your passion for sustainability.
Yeah.
And then I was connecting that to your very proud farm girl origins.
Yep. Yeah.
Also, by the way, I read your post the other day about how being a little girl, you were supposed to figure it out, just work it out.
Yes.
Right. I guess that you've been carrying that along your career journey, right? But the question is, tell me more about that passion for sustainability.
Yeah.
Is that the farm girl in you?
Do you know, so I think deep down it probably is. It's, and also in Australia, which, we all know it's a sunburnt country, fires, drought, all of those sorts of things. So I do think for me, from a sustainability point of view, it's more than I think, people might think we're talking about sustainability just from an environmental point of view. I think about sustainability as longevity of whatever it is. So sustainable business, sustainable farming practices, all of those sorts of things. So you're right, Javier, growing up in Australia, very drought oriented. My father was is a hydro engineer. And so, all over our farm, we were very conscious of building banks and systems to capture as much water as we could so that it wasn't running off and just going to nowhere, that we were always capturing it in dams and things like that. So I think it's been ingrained into me, this idea of build something sustainable, but also then I think there's a personal component of, I always think you should leave behind something stronger than what you inherited.
Yes. And you're making me think also of efficiency, right?
Yep.
Sustainability is efficiency. It's how do you maximize the use of the resources that you have, right?
Absolutely. And, it's interesting because, and I talk a lot about, and I do think this is part of the farming. I think this is part of the Australian culture. And you'll talk a lot about efficiency. I like to think of it as being really pragmatic, like making the most of what you've got and what you can influence and what you can do. You still dream and you still want to make the impact, but you have to be pragmatic about that because you've got to take other people with you.
Yes. So, Joanna, your career is impressive, but I'm going to leave all the titles and companies on the side for a second because I want to understand what moving to so many countries and living in such different cultures has taught you.
Oh, so much. It's like so very much. I reflect a lot on that, and at its core, it absolutely shapes who you are as a leader, because you've also got to think, Javier, when you move to different cultures where your default is not the norm. So you instantly have to know that your instant reaction to something can't be the way forward. So I think that it really forces you to listen, to ask a lot more questions, honestly, to be very humble, be very curious, because you have to seek to understand, because you're potentially making a decision in a frame of reference that is not your inherent, it's not core to who you are, and it may feel really uncomfortable. So you also have to learn to ask the right questions to get a level of comfort that you can make the right call or the right decision in that moment. But I also think that it really helps you navigate the world as it kind of now is. If I'm really honest, I think with all the geopolitics that are happening and the fracturing that's being able to have an insight of not just having, like on a business trip, visited a market, but having spent years living in these different countries gives you a lot more insight into their motivations, where they might be coming from, and therefore how do you navigate it?
Let me put you on the spot.
Yeah.
What is the one thing you keep from Australia, one thing from China, and one thing from the Netherlands?
Wow. So Australia, pragmatism.
Got
That's
it?
just, it's very pragmatic. China, a respect for the longevity of people's cultures.
Uh-huh.
And the Netherlands, that pioneering spirit to go and conquer the world from a very small country.
Got it. Nice. Okay, let's get to your Heineken Group world, right? Your position, your role is probably one of the broadest that I've come across, right? You have, and maybe I'm leaving something, I'm neglecting something, but government affairs, public policy, sustainable development, and global communications.
Yep.
I personally am a firm believer in the integration of these different disciplines,
Yep.
and actually also a firm believer in not structuring teams based on the expertise, but based on the story that you want to tell,
Yep.
and how you bring all those different expertise together to make it happen, right?
Yep.
But tell me, what's the rationale within Heineken for doing things the way you guys are doing it?
Yep. So, Javier, great question. And actually, before I answer that, for me, because I find the power of those three kind of teams being together so important. When I made the decision to leave Coke and join Heineken, that was one of my requirements. I only wanted a job where I had those three together. And you tapped into this a little bit. That integration to me creates strength. And the reason that I say that is, and you also tapped into this as well in your question, stakeholders. Now, whether the stakeholders are media, investors, our employees, NGOs, anybody that's out there, but stakeholders for me don't assess trust in a silo. Like, they are looking for the coherence. And when you've got the power of those three functions together in corporate affairs, it allows you to connect the narrative, your policy, and the actions that you then take. And whether it's tax policy, sustainability policy, any of those components, but they're looking for the coherence across those three different areas. I also think that it allows you to create much faster judgment, stronger decisions, that also lends to greater credibility in terms of either internally or even externally. And you talked about the storytelling, because the other bit for me, and this kind of connects to the narrative, the policy, and the coherence together, is that consistency enables you to be really clear about what you're saying, what you're doing, and what you actually stand for.
Yes. And Carlota, my guest from the third episode of the podcast, she put it super simply. She said that reputation is the consistency between what you say and what others perceive.
Yep.
Right? And yeah, that's
Yep.
good. Take us to day one in your job at Heineken. You already said that you wanted to have this full integration and this full powerhouse under your leadership. What was the most important thing for you to establish?
Day one, when I came into Heineken?
Yeah.
It's day one, I think it was two things. And they're connected, to be honest. I think it was the connections. Like, you needed to go and connect with people. They had to get to know you personally. And part of that was the credibility. I mean, I had 20 years at the Coca-Cola company, and I had the privilege of Coke moving me all around the world. People who've worked for Heineken also have those types of careers. They move all around the world. And so therefore you have incredible networks within companies when you've had that kind of experience and background to come in the senior position in the company without that history and that legacy. You've got to build it fast. So you have to build what I kind of think of it as the credibility and the connections.
And I'll quick side note. I will always remember when I left AbbVie after 12 years and joined
Yep.
Novartis. And I will always remember that my first thought after a couple of weeks with Novartis was how much I underestimated the fact that I no longer had control over the network that I had
Yeah.
built.
Yep.
So that feeling of where do I go? How do I figure this out? Who do I
Yep.
ask? That
Yep.
access, rapid access to
Yep.
people
Yep.
and information is a big barrier, right?
Yep.
And I
And
never
it's interesting.
thought that hard about it in the process.
Yeah. And Javier, I also think that it probably links a little bit to agility, curiosity, and learning, and having lived in different countries. Because it's also the same. Like every time I've moved countries, I've had to, like obviously my network and my colleagues have come with me virtually, but you have to reset up a new network in every country you move into. Well, the same happens when you move into a new company. So I had to treat it in a similar way to kind of go, you know what, I'm never going to have a 20-year career in Heineken, just age-wise, realistically, it's not going to happen. But how do I build that network fast? How do I tap into others who have that network, who can help me understand the undercurrents and the undertows of what's going on? And how do they also, to be honest, be a little bit of that lighthouse that also says to other people, actually, you know what? She knows what she's doing. She's a good human being, all of those sorts of things.
Yeah, super interesting. And Joanna, at Coca-Cola, you played an instrumental role launching what became the World Without Waste
Yep.
commitment.
Yeah.
That was the industry first pledge to collect and recycle the equivalent of every bottle or can sold globally by 2030.
Yeah.
One of the things, as I was doing research for this conversation, one of the things that struck me of this one positively was the very specific commitment to an outcome,
Yep.
right? Which
Yes.
also because how difficult it is for big corporations, like in this case Coca-Cola, to publicly commit to something like that, right?
Yep.
So the minute you are out there socializing that,
Yep.
you're on the hook, right?
Yep.
So tell me, how did this ambition turn into something this precise?
Yeah.
And how difficult was it to actually make the case for it to go public?
Yeah. Great question. And I remember kind of as we were going through all of this, because obviously, you know, people kind of think of Coke and then sugar. That's kind of the first kind of connective points. And I remember coming towards the end of like one of the years and just out talking to people, reading all the different bits and pieces. I was like, okay, there's a little bit where plastic for Coke is potentially the next sugar. And so I started to talk to people. I interviewed people. I talked to people internally. I talked to people externally. And I remember drafting a paper that I then gave to the head of the function at that point and literally titled the paper, Plastic is the Next Sugar. And I gave it to him over the Christmas break. And I made sure it was short. It was only a couple of pages long, but I talked a lot about that I could see the threat coming, and I pointed to certain areas of things that were going, conversations about legislation, tax, NGOs, like all the different, like the signals, if that kind of makes sense. I think that's one of the huge jobs we have as corporate affairs, picking up those signals and doing the so what. And so I drafted this paper, picking up the signals and basically starting to say, I think that this is a a threat that is coming our way, I do think we have an opportunity to maybe get ahead of this, but this is not something that we can do on our own. At the end of the day, sugar, like what goes into our products at Coke, that's in our control. How we market, how we advertise, the packaging, the amount of sugar, that was all in our control. Plastic, like Coke could not solve this on our own. And so part of my paper and my rationale was I think that we need to mobilize a bit of a movement because this isn't going to be just up to us. This government's going to have a role. The consumer's going to have a role. Legislators and other companies are going to have a role. Like this can't just be up to us. But if we don't mobilize a bit of a movement, then stuff will just be done to us that maybe is completely out of our control and actually won't help the problem. So that was kind of the essence of the paper that I wrote and I submitted and I gave to my boss over the holidays. He came back from the holidays and look, this is one of those moments where it's happened to all of us and you just have to embrace it. Where I remember him coming back from the holidays and he called a meeting with me and he said to me, he was like, Joanna, plastic is the next sugar. We need a strategy. Let's go.
Wow.
And let's think through what are we going to do? And so that was then so great. This was his idea. So that's a win for starters. And so we started a whole lot of work where we started to engage other companies, industry associations, bits and pieces to start to think about what is it that we can do. And there was a component where, look, it was really bold and it was really brave. But I talk a lot about the idea of if you don't shoot for the stars, well, you're never going to get off the planet. And maybe we might have landed on the moon. We never got to the stars, but we got to the moon and we mobilized and legislation came in place, co-ops came in place, consumers started to think about it. Now, it happened at different paces around the world, but you created this sense of we need to do something.
What year was this?
I'm trying to remember. So I think that we launched it in 2017. So it's probably 2016 we'd started the conversations internally.
So I have to tell you that 10 years ago then, you were pioneering on something that is actually super current today, which is this idea or this expectation of all chief corporate affairs, chief comms officers, that rather than being the function that is able to look back and measure some output, we need to become the function that is predictive, that is able to anticipate what's next around the corner and how do we turn it into an opportunity.
Yes.
That's what you did.
No, and it's interesting because I had a session with my leadership team recently, and in corporate affairs, and I always use the analogy, two things. So one, I always use the analogy of you need to build the fire department in advance of the fire. So you need to be thinking about what is coming your way, because in the moment you can't build allies and you can't build the defense mechanisms and all of those sorts of things. I also think the biggest disservice we do to ourselves in corporate affairs is think of ourselves just as those people that make things go away. We actually shape, we drive agendas, we create the future. And you hear in corporate affairs, people talk a lot about social license to operate. That's quite passive and reactive. And so my leadership team and I, we started to talk a lot about actually for corporate affairs, our purpose is to create the social license for growth.
And you described sustainability and responsibility as now integral to how the company operates.
Yep.
Not how the company communicates, which is to me a nuance but important distinction. Because in many cases, you see how a company communicates something, but they don't walk the talk.
Yeah.
How do you make that shift?
Yeah. So it's a great question. I think that part of it, maybe heavier, this is part of the pragmatic component in me of the idea of be, do, say at the end of the day. You have got, reputation is your anchor, it is your currency, it is what you have to protect to the end of the earth. And if you don't have anything substantive behind it, your currency, your reputation can be undone in a heartbeat. So if you don't have that foundation underneath of walking the talk, actually implementing what you're saying, if you're just communicating, it's a house of cards. It's all too easy to fall apart.
Agreed. And that happens too often.
It does. And look, it's also like there's also a component in this role that you have to be courageous. You often have to be the voice in the room that is telling people what they don't want to hear. And that's hard. Like that is really hard, but that has to go to, at the end of the day, you have to be true to your values, your core, and, walk away going, I did the best that I could in my beliefs, my values. And that is bringing often the outside in to say, this is what people are saying about us. This is how people feel about us. This is what people are going to do to us if we don't do X, Y, Z.
Yes. Heineken has made responsible drinking part of the agenda, right?
Yes.
And the growth of 0.0 is cornerstone of the company's strategy. So, to what extent is moderation now part of it's a mainstream behavior?
Yep, it's core. It is absolutely core. At the end of the day, and this is Heineken has amazing values as a company, and they truly believe in moderation. It permeates through everything we do, even company events in terms of alcohol consumption. At the end of the day, Heineken, do not agree with harmful drinking. It is not what we believe in. It is not what we support. We have a role to make sure that society has drinks in moderation. It is better for all of us. It's actually better for our business at the end of the day. We have to do the right thing. And so moderation is core to what we do. We are a huge believer in lower alcohol-based beverage products. 0.0 we see as a huge part of our future. And one of the things that we've been really trying to do in the last couple of years is what we call normalize 0.0. Because, you go back in time, and if I was standing there drinking a 0.0 product as a female, one of the questions might have been, oh, are you pregnant? Or are you driving? So a couple of years ago, we launched a campaign around 0 reasons needed. And part of our strategy now is really around the normalization of 0.0. And part of that normalization is, even in Europe, which is a heavily like draft bar kind of culture, is actually having a 0.0 draft on the counter, having glasses that are the same as the Heineken glasses, but they've got the blue 0.0 on it, so that you can be in there with your friends having a beer that's 0.0 and not having to explain anything. And obviously, I have to have a plug. Like, I love our Heineken 0.0. It is great tasting beer.
I love it too. And I also can relate to the mocking in the past around drinking non-alcohol or non-alcoholic or 0.0 beer.
Yeah. And look, even when I look at the innovation pipeline that is coming through from us, like the amount of innovation that's happening in that 0.0 space is like, it's amazing. I mean, like Heineken 0.0 is the leader in the 0.0 space as a brand, but we can already see like the competition are coming out with lots of 0.0. I see our innovation pipeline. So this is the direction of travel.
Yeah. Let me double down on the fact that at the end of the day, and speaking bluntly here, Joanna, Heineken's product is the issue in itself, right? Being provocative, right?
Yeah.
So how do you manage the reputational element of what the company does from a corporate affairs perspective?
No.
Knowing that.
Yeah. No. Happy. It's a really good provocative question. And you're right. It's alcohol at the end of the day. We also like to talk a lot about the fact that beer has been around for 8,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it was even before we had writing. Like it's, and I think one of the nicest things around things like beer, food, is it brings people together. And that whole social connectivity and connectedness. So there's a bit where, people just like to get together, to relax, to have fun, to converse, have a drink, not have a drink. It's choice. So one of our biggest roles is to provide that choice. I also think that one of our really important roles, and I talk also a lot about this, is the idea that, and all companies should be like this, is, brewing is industry intensive. Like it's not like it's a light product that people pay a lot of money for that we can ship around the world. So we have to have breweries in countries because we can only ship so far economically.
Mm-hmm.
So you also want to make sure that in every neighborhood that you are present, they actually want you to be a part of that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you doing to support the local community? Jobs, water, any of those ideas. So the idea being that people want you to be the neighbor. Like people are happy to have you in their market. Do you pay well? Do you look after your people? Do you support the government in addressing harmful drinking? Like all of those components. Are you a good taxpayer? So I look at it as, although yes, alcohol is in our product, but we produce so many different products and we give consumers the choice of what they do or don't consume with or without alcohol, but we're in their community helping them to be stronger.
Yeah. No, and I'm, what I'm taking away is the strategy is for Heineken to become a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
In a way that nobody is hiding or
No.
being ashamed of the
Yeah.
product or that you guys do. It's much
Yeah.
more about engaging and co-creating with
Yeah.
stakeholders what a reasonable environment for moderate consumption is, right?
Exactly. And you opened earlier a couple of questions ago, and it is core to the strategy is the concept of responsibility and moderation.
Yeah. Super interesting. Let's talk now, and we'll move to the next topic. But let's talk a little bit about the work on the government affairs and public policy side, knowing again that policymakers' agenda is,
Yep.
I assume, very much in conflict with your business. So how do you build credibility, and what do those interactions look like?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
the happy medium there?
Yeah. And so the first thing I would say, Javier, is we also need to keep in mind that government is not one body. Like you've got revenue, you've got business, you've got health, you've got the economic. Like there is a lot of. You've got the ag department. So there is a lot of different influences within government who can be influencing the agenda. So I also think it's really important that you're engaging broadly. I also think it's really important that you don't just go in and go like, here's my Heineken story, blah, 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 that you actually engage them. You ask them, what are their issues? What are their problems? What is going on? You listen, and you understand. And then, depending on what they say, you might correct misperceptions. You may provide some additional information, but you have to engage government. There is a component, and this is also, particularly for us at Heineken, I think one of the things that's really nice is we talk about a lot of being local for local's sake. Like literally more than probably 75, 80% of what we do is very local and in country. Our sourcing, our jobs, our distribution. You think about the economic impact we have like upstream and downstream in our value chain from sourcing barley and hops and then, creating the agricultural jobs, the milling, the malting, and then you get into our breweries and all the jobs that are there. And then you get into the distributors. and the customers and then the consumers. So I think it's also really important to explain to people the local economic impact we have up and down the stream, but then also saying to them what else we are actually doing. Like, don't hide away from the fact that we're an alcohol company. Acknowledge it. Talk about the innovation that we're doing. Talk about the consumer behavior that we're changing. Like all of those components, it's all really important to the story.
Yes, agreed. And I was thinking that, reputation dynamics, to your point on on localizing your story, reputation dynamics across geographies are completely different, right? And
Yep.
US, China, Europe, completely different realities. So what breaks when you try to apply a global strategy
Yeah.
to the local reality? What is that one thing that always breaks?
Wow. Okay, so I think the one thing that always breaks is thinking that you can do I don't know if this is going to make sense, Javier, but like cookie cutter strategy. So you can basically just say, we've learnt this in this country, and you can just plug and apply it to the next country with no adaptation. Now, I'm not saying that everything should be adapted 100%, but you have to allow like freedom within a framework. You have to kind of say, here is our strategy, here are our priorities, these are the things that we're going after. But every market doesn't have to implement every component, because for some markets, A is more important than B. So they should spend more time on A, but maybe they have to tweak it a little bit. So it's such a fine line between, you've got to have a certain level of consistency, because otherwise it ladders to nothing. You've got 1,000 voices saying nothing. So there's got to be some consistency, but you've got to allow that freedom.
Also, and because only your teams on the ground know how to translate that strategy into something meaningful and relevant in the local environment, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they're also going to know their own stakeholders, what's important to those stakeholders versus other markets, and obviously depending economically where markets are, political environment, you've got to be willing to hear your local people's concern and then work out collectively what is the solution. Like I love to talk a lot about, okay, I've heard all of this, and it's often easier to people to say, oh, that's just not going to work here. And the default just being no, or we've tried that before, don't do that again kind of thing. But I love sort of saying to people, but what is the path to yes? What's different this time that we didn't have last time? Like, just keep kind of thinking about this. How can we push this here, pull back here, but be respectful?
Yes. If you could redesign one thing about how CEOs and boards understand corporate affairs, what would it be?
No. Then it's not just the insurance department. You opened with the idea of like our real power is shaping agendas. I often like to think that in corporate affairs, we are probably interacting as a function within companies with the most varied people externally and internally. And our real superpower is collating all those disparate bits of information and finding the way through the gray to say this is what needs to happen, and actually helping companies shape their future direction, not just make the problems go away.
And how would you define the one challenge that makes you the most anxious today?
Actually, the gray. Like one of the things that I think is the hardest part in corporate affairs broadly is, we're not sales, so you don't have like sales reports every day. We're not marketing where you've tested an ad and how the consumer is going to respond to it. We spend a lot of time in the gray. We spend a lot of time impacting. Ultimately, our currency, our anchor is our corporate reputation. It is very hard to change corporate reputation in the positive rapidly. It's very easy to undo it rapidly, but it's so we play the long game. And whether it's legislation, whether it's your reputation, we play a long game and in the gray zone and trying to demonstrate the value you bring in that gray. I think that's the bit that's really hard day in and day out.
How do you cut through the gray?
How do you cut through the gray? Yeah. And so, and this is kind of the thing because I also think that a lot of people in corporate affairs often tend to just kind of go, okay, this is what we're doing. We'll go and do the job. We make stuff go away. You also need to be a lot more front-footed and proactive and kind of be out there saying, this is what I'm hearing. This is what we're seeing. This is what we need to be doing. We need to be talking about this. You know, even when I joined Heineken, one of my observations after the first 6 months was I sort of said to Dolph, our CEO, like I've come out of Coke where we talked about sugar all the time. I've now been in Heineken for 6 months and actually we don't actively talk about alcohol. Who's saying what? Whose agenda is what? Where do we need to go to? What does the science say? Like we need to do a better job of talking about this in our company so people are very aware of the different points of view, the pressure points. Like how do we feel about this as a company? It's bringing that kind of outside and that unknown a lot more forward in the conversation. And also, Javier, sorry, because I cut you off, but also being really comfortable that you're not necessarily going to have all the answers.
Or that your answer, your recommendation is going to be based on your own judgment.
Yes.
And judgment is built over time.
Yep.
With experience or through experience, right? And hopefully that good judgment is going to build the credibility that you need so that you can have the CEO's ear, right?
Yes. And you're right. It is that judgment. You know, like the thing with corporate affairs is that judgment is built over like decades of career of getting it wrong. Let's be honest. And it's the scars so that you've also got the ability so two things. One, the ability to kind of go, I might have like been here before and what did I learn last time? But also that network of being able to ring people and go, okay, this is what's happening right now. This is what I've thought about. This is how I'm thinking about it. What have I missed? And having that trusted network of someone else just kind of saying either, actually, have you thought about what about? Yep, I did, or I didn't. Good point. So it is but that judgment is really important and you can't own it on your own. You do need other people sense checking you.
I cannot let you go without talking artificial intelligence. So scale 1 to 10.
Yep.
How are you guys doing from an AI perspective and add some color to it?
Yeah. So I think that we're, as a total function at the moment in Heineken, honestly, I think we're probably sitting at a 3, but our enthusiasm is at an 8 and our curiosity and our interest is at an 8. So at the beginning of the year, I had my leadership team together in Amsterdam in March, and I brought out an outside group. And basically, my brief to them was, I want you to share with the leadership team the art of the possible in AI. I want you to like blow our brains about what is possible in AI. And what I also did was that I got my head of operations to also invite what we called AI enthusiasts within the team to also participate in that session with the leadership team. And it really helped everybody go, wow. And so in terms of like the 3, in terms of how we're using it, but the enthusiasm and the experimentation is like at a 9 and a 10. Everybody's in there. They're playing it. We're using systems. We're testing things. So really, I've seen us come from March being a little bit like to actually like really embracing it, really testing things, really starting to see the art of the possible with AI. And particularly for us in corporate affairs, I think the real turning point was the idea of this is not taking jobs. This is actually allowing us to have like microbursts of productivity, to actually get to create some agents and scour the legislation around the world and in 3 hours have a response versus taking months to do it and probably being half as accurate as what the agents did.
And with the explosion of AI, are you thinking about how to tackle it and how to not tackle but actually maximize it?
Yeah.
From an org structure perspective, from a talent perspective.
Yep.
And what are your thoughts on that? Nothing that, I mean, whatever you can disclose here.
Yeah, no, look, to me, where we're at the moment is taking what I would term like the grunt work, like having to go through legislation, having to go through documents, having to go through bits and pieces, getting, agentic AI to kind of go through and pull all of that information for you in hours, not months, so that my people are then freed up to do the so what. So for me, where am I getting to? It's like, how do I maximize the brain, the human element for my people so that they can spend more time thinking about the strategy, the so what, the art of the possible. Have we thought about, could we influence here? So they're spending a lot more time on now, what do I do with this versus getting the information.
So one example of something that that I was working on a few months ago. You tell me how foreign or not this idea sounds. Changing your press releases so that they are a lot more LLM friendly.
Yep.
How far or close is your mindset from that concept?
Very far. So it's not, so what I would say to you, Javier, for us, it's not necessarily the press release per se, but if you really understand how LLMs work, the content that then goes on your website. So it's not just the press release, but it's the Q&A that goes with it. So because at the end of the day, you've got to really understand, how do LLMs really work? How are they sourcing their information? How are they using their information? And how do you then provide your information in the best possible way that it works for the LLMs? So in that area, I think we're actually quite advanced.
I see. Good. It's all super exciting. So much to do, actually.
So much to do. But it's exciting. Like the whole
It is.
That's the other thing too. It's like, I mean, one of the things that I've always had to be careful through my career is that obviously I am wired to change. I wouldn't have moved countries. I wouldn't have moved companies. I wouldn't have done half the things that I do. So I look at all what's happening with AI and all of that as this is yet another change that's going to represent opportunities. Don't be afraid of it. Like, embrace it and work out what you can do with it.
Yeah, endless possibilities. Joanna, beyond the professional, you've served on multiple boards, YWCA, Atlanta Women's Foundation, International Dyslexia Association. Why that, and how do those commitments shape how you lead?
Yeah. So part of it was a combination of personal, obviously, the YWC Atlanta Women's Foundation, being a senior female leader, that was important for me to be in there. Dyslexia was personal in relation to my son. So there was a personal component to it.
Yes.
It's also, there's a component of giving back. So you've got all this experience, all this knowledge, giving back into local communities with your experience. Also bringing into not-for-profits that corporate kind of learning, and how can they be more impactful? What can they do? How can they strengthen their projects, their storytelling, all of that. But then there was also a component for me, because it meant that I got to sit on boards and be part of Remco and audit and all these other things. So I also got to understand different board roles. so that when I interact with my board, for example, whether it was Coke or Heineken, you understand what is the role of a board, what is the role of these different subcommittees and things like that. So for me, doing that type of work where you've got a mix of a personal passion, because you're doing this in your own time,
Mm-hmm.
you're contributing to help them be stronger and more impactful, but you're also getting a professional win out of it, was really important.
Got it. And for someone earlier in their careers in this space, what's the one thing you'd like them to take from this conversation?
Be curious, like stretch yourself, go and do the things that scares you to the bottom of your feet, because that is when the most growth happens.
Speaking of curiosity, the other day I heard from someone who I really admire. She said, curiosity is a professional discipline,
Yep.
not a personality trait.
I love that. Do you know, it's funny that you said that. One of the things that I've learned as I've moved roles and teams and things like that, and knowing that I am inherently curious, so I was thinking of it as a personality trait, but maybe it's a discipline that I've trained myself on. But whenever I start with a new team, I have to say, I always open with, I am an inherently curious person. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm not questioning your expertise, but I'm seeking to understand.
Yes, which is a good
Yeah.
good preempting. Very good. Listen, one last a couple more questions, and we'll wrap it up. One is actually pure curiosity on my end.
Yeah.
How much time? So if we look at the three big disciplines, government affairs, sustainability, comms, how
Yep.
much time in percentage do you spend on each today?
Okay. So no, it's a great question. And the reality is it varies depending on what could be going on in each of the areas. And this is not a cop-out. And I honestly, but if I look over the time,
Yeah.
they all get a third.
Got it. Good.
Yeah. But it varies day in, month out, depending on what's happening.
Very good. And how or where can people find and follow you?
LinkedIn is probably the best one. Javier, you opened earlier with, I had a bit of a reflection about
Yes.
growing up in Australia as a farm girl, and that whole idea of you're out in the middle of nowhere with big farms in Australia, and you've just got to solve the problems yourself. So LinkedIn is the best one.
And just another side note, only because it was a reflection that you made that also stuck with me. You posted something about when you review a given document that someone is sending or draft of something,
Yeah.
you will make comments. You will not
Yes.
line edit,
No.
which is exactly, I mean, it resonated with me big time, exactly what I
Yeah.
try to do all the time,
Yeah.
unless you want to send a message to that person. Because the minute you
Yes.
start line editing,
Yeah.
it sends a
No,
different
and-
message.
Yeah. And Javier, you're spot on. And it's also, you know, when you reflect on the behaviors you have as a leader, you can often tap it back to an experience you've had somewhere along the way.
Yes.
So for me, one of the first jobs that I had, I would write something, and then the deputy manager at that point would literally redline, and it actually was a red pen, and she would go through and literally change everything in there to the point where it was her words and not my words. So it wasn't even like that was wrong, but you just didn't like the fact that I used was instead of is, as you know. And so that was that's kind of a reaction I had there. And then a lot of time I spent in Asia with Coke. What I also found was, as I started to lead teams, the more you edit documents, the quality you get back gets poorer and poorer, because you're not teaching. You're not building capability. You're not teaching. And so for me, I honestly, one of your key jobs as a leader of people is to build capability, is to grow the next generation of leaders. And you can only do that by sharing your thinking, your observations, so that they can go and try again. But Javier, you are also correct. There are times where if, for example, I've seen a couple of iterations and they're still not getting it, then it's, all right, this is what it should look like.
Period. Very good, Joanna. So listen, my takeaway, my key highlight for today, and keep me honest here because
Yep.
I only memorized it and then had to write it down a bit later. Corporate affairs purpose is to build social license to grow.
Yes.
Got it. Love that one. Joanna, thank you so much. This was dynamic. It was fun, inspiring, and very, very, very educating. So educational. And everybody else, before we go, the usual reminder, you guys please join or follow the podcast on your preferred platform, share it with your networks, and see you very soon.